Hello and welcome to WION Live broadcast from London. I'm Ollie Barrett. And we will start with the developing news here in the UK, where Prime Minister Boris Johnson is currently on his feet in the House of Commons for his weekly Prime Minister's Questions session. Many of his own MPs hope that it is his last. He is fighting for his political survival. Several more Conservative MPs have quit his government today, taking the total number of resignations in the last 24 hours to over 15. Among them, Will Quince, the Minister for Children and Families, who says he had no choice but to tender his resignation. Junior Transport Minister Laura Trott was another who quit. She cited a loss of trust in Boris Johnson's government. Robin Walker, Minister for Schools Standards, resigned, saying the government's been overshadowed by mistakes. Now, on Tuesday, Chancellor Rishi Sunak and the Health Secretary Sajid Javid stepped down. The two senior ministers resigned within 10 minutes of each other, clearly trying to prompt the move aside of the Prime Minister. They were followed by a flurry of junior ministers and aides also calling it quits. Now, Sunak and Javid attacked the Tory leadership in their resignation letters. Boris Johnson is trying to keep his government afloat. As I say, he's on his feet at the moment in that weekly Prime Minister's Questions session, and he keeps talking about how he will keep going, certainly not sounding like a Prime Minister currently thinking about stepping aside. He's also quickly appointed Nadhim Zahawi as the new Chancellor.
The advice of his former self, get over his terror and do the decent thing.
Do you think this Prime Minister has integrity?
I do. I think he...
So we need to know.
Well, because he's determined to deliver for this country.
Well, we will still keep looking at those live pictures from the Commons, because directly after Prime Minister's Questions, we expect to get a resignation statement from Sajid Javid, the outgoing Health Secretary, and that is considered potentially explosive as a moment in the House of Commons. So we'll keep an eye on Westminster, as I say. Number 10's Chief of Staff, Steve Barclay, as we continue talking about the reshuffle, moves into the Health Secretary role vacated by Sajid Javid. The resignations came after last week former Tory Deputy Chief Whip Chris Pincher stepped down after being accused of sexual misconduct. Downing Street at first said that Boris Johnson was unaware of previous misconduct allegations regarding Chris Pincher. But then Number 10 was forced to clarify and say that the Prime Minister had initially forgotten that he was informed in 2019.
Their sense of themselves and their own personal freedom and security. And I thank her for the work she's doing as... Yes, I think it was a mistake, and I apologise for it. I think in hindsight it was the wrong thing to do. I apologise to everybody who's been badly affected by it, and I just want to make absolutely clear that there's no place in this government for anybody who is predatory or who abuses their position of power.
Well, of course, this is just the latest controversy for Boris Johnson's government. He's had that investigation and a fine for flouting COVID rules. We've seen the Conservatives losing those two crucial by-election polls last month as well, just to illustrate some of the difficulties for the Prime Minister and some of the reasons that ministers and aides are now stepping down. Well, let's talk to Sally Patterson, our London correspondent, to get more on this. And Sally, things are changing minute by minute at the moment, but how do we expect the rest of the day to play out now?
Well, as you say, Ollie, this really is a very fast-changing situation. We have now just seen Prime Minister's Questions, where the Prime Minister really did get grilled by the opposition Labour Party and also by the Scottish National Party, who said that the Prime Minister should now call a general election. But that's not looking likely. What's far more likely to happen is changes to the 1922 committee. Now, this committee is made up of backbench Conservative members of Parliament, and they are basically in charge of the rules within the party. Now, exactly a month ago today, we saw the Prime Minister very narrowly survive a vote of confidence. Now, what this committee could do is change the rules, as currently it will need to be 12 months from the last vote for another vote of confidence to be held. However, this committee is currently looking at replacing its committee members, and it's likely that nominations will open later today. And there are backbench MPs who are critics of the Prime Minister who have already said that they're going to be running to be on that committee so that they can go ahead and change those rules, which could see a vote of confidence, again, another one against the Prime Minister, as soon as Monday. Now, the members of Parliament will be leaving soon for the summer recess in about 2 weeks. So there are concerns whether this might happen before or when they come back in autumn. But there are, of course, many MPs who are pushing for this sooner rather than later. The Prime Minister is also going to be pulled up in front of the Liaison Committee, which is another parliamentary committee made up of the heads of select committees. So this is a pretty important group of people. And originally, this is a pre-planned meeting. So originally, this was going to look at things like the crisis in Ukraine and the cost of living in the UK. But actually, what's likely to now dominate that meeting is the crisis within Cabinet and the Prime Minister's reluctance or refusal to leave and what his plan is next. So it's going to be a very busy few hours for the Prime Minister, where we could see both rule changes be announced, and we could also see him get very, very heavily criticised by some of the leaders within Parliament. And, you know, we have seen more and more members of his cabinet, as well as backbench MPs, coming out and saying they have lost confidence in him. Now, Chris Skidmore, who is an MP, has actually sent in a letter of no confidence, which basically saying that he has lost all faith in the government, and this type of behaviour wouldn't be acceptable in other areas, and it shouldn't be acceptable in this workplace. And so it's likely then that he and other backbench MPs will be pushing for further ways to get rid of the Prime Minister once and for all.
Sally, thank you. That's Sally Patterson reporting live from London.